Hello everybody and welcome back to 100 Days of Code with me, Lily Code. Today we're on day 59, so if you don't know what's going on, get with the program. I'm only joking. Yeah, we're already on day 59, so the time's flying. So, we've been doing this for 59 days now. It's absolutely fabulous. So we're just going to continue on. And what we want to do now is be able to add items to this cart. So this actually should be number of cart items. I undid that, so I'll just put this back down here and then we will continue. So So we have this add item to cart handler, which is taking in an item and it's going to allow us to add items to the cart. So we will need to just set up the functionality for that, and that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to use Reducer in order to do this because it's slightly more complex state management. What we want to do is, first of all, add an item to the cart. So for example, if we want to add sushi, we'll just add in a sushi, and if there's already sushi there, we want to increment the number of sushi to 2 sushi, not just add another sushi into the cart, so that they're separate items. We will have 2 sushis in the cart, if that makes sense, the way a normal cart would work for any food ordering application, or clothes or something. If you wanted 2 pairs of the same shoes, which I'm not sure why anyone would do that, but people are people. So, I'm sure loads of people think, oh, I love them. And that's great. Good for them. Get all the shoes you want, guys. So, just continuing on here. I'm going to use Reducer, yeah. Cool. So, yeah, as we know, Reducers take in a state and an action. So, we'll just set up our Reducer function here. These should clearly be indented because we've come inside now, so these should be level in. This is at that level where this bracket ends, and then they should have just been indented one. So I've just done that there, and then I'll create a constant Reducer. I'll call it cart Reducer just to be slightly more specific. Cart Reducer, and this is going to use Reducer. Well, first of all, we'll pass in the 2 things we need, so the state and the action, and then this is going to be an arrow function. Yes, and then we return a new state snapshot as part of this Reducer. So you take in the current state and you return out a different state. So we will return. And we'll also just set up a default state, because then we can use this. So I'll declare another constant here, call this default state. And equal this to our initial cart state. So default cart state, let's say. And this can be equal to an object with 2 items in it. So we just have the items, and which is an array, and the total amount of 0. So these are the things that we want to manage the state of, total amount. And we're just initializing them here. So we're starting at 0 and we're starting with no items in the cart, which makes perfect sense. So then we will return this state when we use this Reducer. Perfecto selecto. Sorry, itchy back, you guys. Yeah. Okay guys, so actually, right, these should have been defined outside of this function, so they should be defined out here. So they can move back in a level because we're not yet within any function. I'll move this down just for clear viewing, and then in here we're going to use that Reducer within the component function declaration. So in here we'll say const, and we'll pass in the cart state. So this is where we're going to use the reducer, and then dispatch cart action. So for the reducers, you have your initial state and then your actions that you're dispatching, and then this is going to be equal to useREDUCER. Yes, and in here we're going to pass the cart reducer, which is our default cart state, yeah, and our default cart state as our initial state. So perfect. Coolaboola. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so rather than just accessing an empty array here within our cart context, we can start off by actually plugging all this together. So we can use our cart state dot items here, and then the same for our amount. We'll use our cart state dot amount. Did we call it amount? No, we called it total amount. So the initial state is actually called total amount, so that's what we want to pass in here. Perfect. So now we can actually fill out these methods that we have. So within our cart provider here, we have our add item cart handler and our remove item cart handler, so we can start fleshing this out now. So what we want to do is use our dispatch method in order to change or run the action on the state. So we'll dispatch cart action, and then you can give it the action type that you want to actually dispatch. So we'll say type, and we can call this add item, but I'll just wait and see what Max calls it. Add, yeah, add and remove. I was thinking that was a good name. Or no, he's after continuing. No, just add. Perfect. And then also, because we are adding something, we need to know what it is that we're adding. So we'll add a second thing into this dispatch function here, and we'll pass in the item, and this is just going to be the item that was actually passed in. So we're just renaming the item here to item. We're sticking with the same name, and we're passing in this item here. We're saying use that item, pass it in, and then that's what we're going to add. And I do not know why this is, but let's just continue. Maybe it's because I don't yet have that defined, so we'll just continue on. And then our remove is going to be the same. So our remove is obviously going to be the same, but instead we will remove, and this time we will pass the ID, which is just the ID that's coming in. So great, we have that set up as well. That makes sense, hopefully. So you have, and then once I create these two types of add and remove, it'll tie in together a bit better as to what's actually going on here as well. So now in our cart reducer, we can add these different dispatch methods, the different types of methods that we want to dispatch when we use this useREDUCER. So we'll say if action dot type is add, and tell it what to do, and we'll do the same for remove. Cool. So just watching the video. So what we want to do in here is first of all take our current items that we have. So get the state of the current item. So we'll create a constant called updated items, which we're going to add the other items to this as well. But we'll start off with just the state.items. So whatever items are currently in the state. Sorry. Sometimes you gotta stretch when you're sitting at a computer all day. Hey. So have a little stretch for yourself, guys. And we will continue. And then, yeah, we're just going to concatenate onto the end. So stick onto the end. concat. Yeah. And what was Max just saying there? Yes. So the difference between push and concat is that when you push an item to an array, you are changing the original array. And when you're dealing with state, we shouldn't mutate the original state. We should just create a new item or, you know, duplicate it. So concat sticks it onto the end of the array, but it creates a new array in the process. So we are not mutating the state of the current state object. I hope that makes sense. So, and if it doesn't, let me know in the comments, because I'll happily do a video on it or explain it in more depth. Like, that's no problem. So if anything doesn't make sense, let me know, and you know, I'll go and do my research, or probably I'll know the answer because I'm talking about these things. But if I don't, I'll make sure I get it for you and I'll let you know. That's the whole point, guys. So action.item. That's not how you spell action.item. Cool. Cool. So now we have our updated items, and we also want our new total updated amount. So we will create another updated total amount variable. And what we will do is calculate the total amount now as well. So we'll have state.total amount, and we'll add this to our action. Action dot item dot price, item dot price, and we will multiply this by our action dot item amount. So if we just have one, that's fine, but if we have 2 or 3 that have been added to the cart, we'll multiply the number, the price, the initial price, by how many items we have. So we have action for all you people out there buying 6 pairs of shoes in one go. We will calculate that price for you, because you just love your Crocs so much. I actually do quite like Crocs, so no digs meant, just having a laugh. And then we'll just return a new state snapshot where we return our items, which is our updated items, and our amount, total amount, sorry, which is our updated total amount. Perfect. Okay. Cool. Okay, so now what we're going to do is hook up our actual cart, so that when we add an item, that these different reducer functions run and actually perform these operations. So that's what we're going to do next. It's all exciting in the house. Cool. Yes, so in our meal item form, this is where we are adding the item. So we'll go to meals, meal item form. And in here we have this form submission button. So it's here that we're going to run the handler. So when we click add, we run the handler, we pass through the item, we get the total amount, we get the item, and we add it to the cart. So we just need to define that in here. So we will create a constant, which is going to be a submit handler. This is going to take in an event. We're just making an arrow function. Ay, mamma mia. I think Max is talking a bit quick. But then also sometimes he just explains things, which is all gravy, baby. But, you know, don't want to be, because I have him on, I don't know what speed. But a big speed, 1.75. Yeah, really, for videoing and listening. Slightly lower is better. So I will just add event.prevent default in here to prevent the default behavior, and then we are going to add the behavior that we want, default, and add my semicolon. And then on our form, we will add an on submit, which is going to run this submit handler that we have just created. So perfect. And then we're going to flesh this out, our submit handler. What's a rep? Ref. Oh, okay. So we can use ref here by importing useRef from React. Cool. So in my meal item form, I'm going to create another constant, which is going to be an amount input ref, and this is going to use ref. And then that should add the import at the top of the file for us. Perfect, just coming in from React development there. And then on our input here, we can actually use this ref. So we will add a ref property and equal this to, hey, come over. We'll equal this to our amount input ref. And there should be 2 brackets here. Yeah, of course there should. So because we are actually saying that's a function that's going to be ran from React when you're using the hooks. So okay, so then in our input component, which is here, we want to import React from React. And now what we can do is on this input, we can use ref. So we will equal this to react.forwardRef. Then we pass in the props and ref. Oh, snap, bang, crackle. What is it? Crackle, snap, crackle, pop. Snap, bang, wallop, I was going to say. Oh, that's better anyway. Snap, bang, wallop. So then in our input here, we can add our ref, which is just going to forward a ref on this input. So wherever we use our input, we have this input component that we've created. It's a UI component for all of our input boxes. And now we are going to have the ref in there by using this react.forwardRef on this component. So we'll pass through the ref to the ref parameter. And that's being set from our meal item. Yes, so that's this ref that's been passed through. So perfect. Now we can get access to that input through the refs. So in our submit handler, we can utilize that. So then we'll do a const entered amount. And we get this by accessing amount by accessing .current.value. Awesome. So this is always going to be a string. Even if the value is a number, it gives back a string. So then we need to convert it to a string. So we have entered amount number. And all we do in order to do that is we can just add a plus and say entered amount, and this will convert it to a number for us instead, because we want our number to be, we want our value for our amount to be in a numerical format. So then we can check if the entered amount dot trim dot length is equal to 0, or mamma mia. So, or it is, how did he do that? So he's got it like this. Okay, nice. Or entered amount number is less than 1, or if entered amount number is greater than 5. So we're just adding in some validation checks here. Then we want to just return. So I don't know why you can't have more than 5 items, but that's what this code says. So we just return then in that case. You've got too many sushis. Put 2 away. How can you have too many sushis? It's impossible. Cool. And we'll also track an error. So if there's any errors, we will deal with that. So we'll also import useState. And yeah, I was wondering about this React development thing. Like, this should just be from React, actually. That's where Max has it imported from. And I wasn't sure. I was thinking, surely our hooks are just coming from React, but that was the auto import and I just didn't think about it. I thought it was coming from somewhere else, so sorry for going along with that, guys. I should have known. So my brain did twig, but I just presumed it was correct. Never presume. When you get that hit of intuition, go with it, guys. Seriously, it is always right. I listen to my intuition. Okay. Because it's always right. Like, I get so many intuitive feelings when I'm coding, and then I just go off and start messing about. So no more. No more. I listen to you, my intuition. So initially we'll say that the form is valid, so we'll set it as true initially, and then we'll also just finish this. So this needs to have 2 values: the value that we're trying to track the state of, and then the function that we want to update the value. So we're going to have amount is valid, and then set amount is valid. So that's the function we can use to update this amount is valid. Set amount is valid. Set amount is valid. Cool. So yes, obviously we are going to use that down here. So if we have an entered amount that is, once trimmed, it's equal to 0. If the entered amount number is less than 1, or if it's greater than 5, then we're going to say it's invalid. So now we're going to use our set amount is valid handler, or state function, state updating function, to false. So there we go. Yep. And in that case, yeah, we will show an error message. So underneath the button here, we can conditionally show an error message. So if is, what was it called again? Form is valid or something. Amount is valid. Amount is valid. So we have this amount is valid. So if amount is not valid, then we will show an error message. So to say not, you just do an exclamation mark. And then to say, in this case, if that's truthy, so if amount is not valid, if that's the case, if that evaluates to true, I hope that makes sense. I'm using true and false to swatchy here. So amount is valid is going to tell us whether or not that amount is valid. We set it to true or false dependent on whether the amount is valid. Here we're saying it is not valid with this little exclamation mark. So if amount is not valid, then you do the double ampersands in one of these JSX statements when you're returning your JSX code, and you can add something that you want to show in the case that the amount is not valid. I think that was better explained. So we have our paragraph, and we'll just say, your amount does not work, fool. No, money mess. Obviously, your amount is not valid. Like, this probably isn't the best message, but we might as well have a bit of crack, guys, you know. It's just a little test application. Cool. Max is so much nicer. He was like, please enter a valid amount, 1 to 5. Your amount is not valid. Please enter a valid amount, aka 1 to 5. Feel alive. All right. Perfect. Oh, even a full stop from Max. Oh, Going all the way. Cool. Yes, yeah. So obviously, we've only just handled the case that, you know, there's something wrong here. So what about if it's right? So we'll add that in as well, and I will just, yeah, it feels like that should go down there because, you know, if we're going to be doing it like that, then let's do it like that. And he actually has his ors up on this line, which, you know, just for visual, that does look better, doesn't it, really? Because all your enters, your ducks are in a row now, as they say, as my granny would say, our ducks are in a row. Cool. So then what we're going to do is, in the case that we do not have an error and we haven't set amount as valid to false, and we've passed through this function because none of those cases in here were true and we have something valid, we come down here and we're going to run a function that's being passed in from the props of this component, the meal item form, and that's going to be the on add to cart. And we have our parentheses, and we'll forward on our entered amount number so we can use that. Okay, cool. Okay, so our on add to cart prop that we have here, we are going to go and create that in our meal item form, or in our meal item. So we'll continue to do this now, and then it'll all come together. So in our meal item, this is where we are calling this meal item form, so we can add that prop to this. So we'll say on add to cart, and then tell it what we want to do. So we just pass a pointer to our add to cart handler. So add to cart handler, which we're going to create now. So we'll copy and paste this up above. So constant zonkt. I don't know what that means. So we'll say constant add item to add to cart handler. We will take an amount into this function. This is going to be an arrow function. So we're getting very familiar with loads of core concepts here by just keeping on doing these things. It's very valuable. So here we're going to use our use context. So let's import use context. So I think a good what's the word, a standard way to do this, or at least a recommended way, probably as far as Max is concerned, and it makes sense to me, is to put your React hooks at the top of your file and then have your imports that you've created below, just for a bit of flow, and so you know what's going on. So that's why we're adding this at the top here, because this is coming directly from React. And then you have your meal item form and your classes. I honestly don't think this would make any difference if it was below, but let's just see and find out whether it's not just a visual preference, whether it's a functional requirement. So we'll find. I don't think so, but we're checking it out. And then we'll also import the context we want to use, which is our cart context. So perfecto. Cool. So what we're going to do now within our meal item is use this context. So we'll create another constant called cart context, and we will equal this to use context, which is establishing that connection. Use context and pass in the cart context here. So there we go, lovely jubbly. And then down here in our add to cart handler, we can actually use this context then. So then we say cart context dot add to cart handler. So perfect. Or we want just our add item here actually. So add item. Yeah, that's the one. And that's because it's coming from our context, which in our context we have it called add item. So if we go back to our context, we have our add item here. So that's why we're calling it add item actually, rather than the handler that I had initially put in. That was the wrong name. So Joe, what's going on? So we're back here, yep. Yeah. And we want to pass through the item because that's what we're expecting. When we're adding an item, we need to specify the item that we want to add. So the item is going to have an ID. Props.name, it's coming through in the props. So props.id, then we have the name, props.name, and the amount, which is just going to be the amount, and the price, which is props.price. Cool. And so it is. Yeah, so here we have our price, and this is a formatted price. We are taking the price, the props.price, and fixing it to 2 decimal places. But here, the price that we're actually passing through to the add item to cart handler is not the price as it has been fixed to 2 decimal places. It's the props coming in directly from the from where we're calling this particular component. It'll come in the props we pass it through, and that's the actual the price that we want to use is the price that's coming into this component, because we do also have another price here which is the fixed version to 2 decimal places, but we're not going to use that down here because we just want to send the actual price that came in, you know, whatever it's rounded to. Cool. And then in our available meals component, mamma mia, grazie, please. Okay, so then in our, sorry. Yeah. So then in our meal item, we will also add an ID, which is going to just be the ID, the same as the key. So the ID is equal to our meal.id, the same as below, but it will expect an ID. Or maybe it's just better to have one. It's the key that it always gives out about not having. So you do need the key or else React will throw errors, but the ID is the same as the key. It's just the identifier. Okay, so hopefully now if we save and reload our page, we should be able to add items to this cart. So we're having a problem here. Oh well, so input.js, here we are. So in our input.js we have a problem. So we need an expected token of a comma on line 11, but I don't think that's what this is. Unexpected token, expected a comma here. I mean, that's not going to fix anything, do you know what I mean? Sticking a comma there, that just can't be it really. So it must be something like maybe I'm even doing that wrong, but just to show you, like, it's not a comma. No, it's not a comma. So what's going on is we haven't done something else correctly here. So let's figure out what it is. So we have our return here, and that's all self-contained, so that's okay. Here are two divs there matching up. We have our return matching up. So, oh, we didn't close this. We need an extra bracket. So our bracket is going to go, so we have our blue and our blue. Our pink and our pink are matching up, and we're missing a yellow, and the yellow is going after the curly bracket. So that should be what we're missing. And now if we save, and hopefully you've seen how I did that. So I was just reading back up through the list, you know. So even if we collapse that there, it might be easier to see. So these two brackets here are self-contained. They're, one is opening, one is closing. And that's the parameters we're passing into this particular function. So they're okay. They're the same. They're color-coded. And then we had this other parameter that wasn't being closed anywhere. And you can see that this is the last bracket that we have, so that's why I put it at the end. And then after this one we get the opening curly bracket. So we had our opening curly bracket, we just didn't have our closing. We had our opening and closing curly bracket, we only had an opening normal parentheses, and we didn't have our closing parentheses, and it was giving us the error that we were missing a comma. So it's not always exactly as it says, but it'll give you some good advice. So some good advice is whatever line the problem is on, if you really can't see a problem, work your way back up through the code, because sometimes it can just fail at that point, but actually we were missing something from that line. It just didn't happen to be a comma. So now we have another error here, which is all gravy, baby, because we're going to solve this anyways. Yeah, I don't know what was going on here. So our type is add, and then this makes perfect sense as well to me. Why is it unexpected? So like, look guys, I know this isn't it, but just to be sure, we'll add it in double brackets. Nah. Okay. So what's wrong here? What's wrong? Okay, let's just have a little look and like not worry about it. So we have our dispatch cart action, which is updating the cart state, is declared, but its value is never read. So we have our default cart state out here. Cart context is not being used properly, because that doesn't look like it's imported. So let's just get rid of this for a moment. Do an automatic import. So let's import that again. So we need our import cart context. Okay. Cart provider.js unexpected token on line 28. What am I doing wrong there? This again must be trickling down from somewhere else, I think, because I don't see anything wrong there, you know. So we have our add item cart handler, which is linked to our add item. We have our remove item cart handler. These are dispatching our cart actions, which is a useREDUCER. And then here we have our reducer, which takes our initial state, default cart state. Should we be returning default there? So, okay, I see what's wrong here. Sometimes you just need to open your eyes a little bit wider. So here I have my add item cart handler and I'm equaling it to an arrow function, but it's not an arrow function. I forgot my arrow. So now if we add in our arrow and we save, we have another error, but that's okay because we're moving forward. So what's our next error? Element type is invalid. Check the render method of cart provider. Okay. Okay. So now we have another error. So try and figure this one out. Index.js line 6, check cart provider. Okay. Okay, so there's something going wrong here. So let's just go through it line by line. So we have our import useREDUCER from React, import cart context. Then we're just defining our default cart state. Everything looks fine there. So we've equaled it to an object with items and a total amount. We've initialized items as an empty array and total amount is just a number. Then we have our cart reducer, which is taking in a state and an action. It's an arrow function. We're saying if the action type is add, then create a new variable updated items and another one updated total amount and return the updated items and the total amount. Okay. Then we have this empty remove function that we haven't yet populated, so I'll just get rid of it for now. And then down here we have our actual function declaration. So then we have our cart provider is equal to props. This does not have to be in parentheses, but let's stick it in so I can visually know what's going on here. And then we have our cart and our dispatch cart item. We do not yet have a remove because I didn't define it, although I don't think that matters. You can still say that your type is remove here and then tell it what to do later on, but for now I'll just take it out because something is wrong. Then we have our cart context props.children. I'll also just put this inside parentheses for my own, you know, visual and understanding and all the above. So I'll close that down here. I'll tab these in. And okay. Save and reload just to be sure. Okay. Okay. So what are we looking at here now? Oh. Sorry, that was a mistake. Okay, guys, so let's just keep on going here. So then we have our component declaration cart provider passing in the props. We've got our state and we're setting the state. useREDUCER cart reducer default cart state. That's okay. We do pass in the reducer and the default state to useREDUCER. Okay, and then we have our add item cart handler, which we're taking in an item and we're dispatching the action of type add. And we want to add the item, and then we have our cart context. I don't think that should be a capital letter. Why would we have that a capital letter there? That's referring to our actual cart context. So Oh, fantabuloso. So look at it, what a small letter can do, you know. So fabulous, guys. So let's see if we can add something to our cart now. Well, I did have one in there, but let's try again. Hot diggity damn. Cool. Well, look, at least we're getting some feedback. I'm delighted with that. I'm delighted with that. So great, we're getting some feedback. So something is working, that's good. So on our add item, we're running our add item handler, which is taking in our item. So let's just console log out our item here and make sure that that bit is happening anyway. So we'll console log out item, comma, and item again, and add our semicolon, and let's see what's going on in the town, down around. Fragment is defined but never used. Oh yes, so it is. Yep, because we changed that for our provider. So we can get rid of fragment now from up here. So that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. And then, don't ask. And then we'll just add something else into our cart here and see what happens. So we got our error message, but nothing is logging to the console. So header, so this is in our item, in our individual items, we have our meal item. And yes, we have an add to cart handler just for pig irons. Let's wrap it in parentheses. Don't think that does anything, to be like, it doesn't, but we're getting our error message. So our error message is on our, we have on add to cart handler. So our add to cart handler is here. Our on add to cart should be a prop on our meal item form. On add to cart, it is. We're passing in the entered amount. Okay. If the amount is not valid, show this. So what's our check doing then? So then we have our amount is valid flag, and we're checking if the entered amount .trim.length is equal to 0, or if the entered amount number is less than 1, or if the entered amount number is greater than 5. Set amount is valid to false. Yeah. So is it not picking up the value? So from our meal item then, how are we passing through the value? Meal item form. So in our meal item form. So I'm just trying to figure out why this isn't working, you know guys. So we will get there. So we're in our cart here. Oh, snap-a-lap. Am I doing the right thing? Okay guys, so I just watched on for another second, and basically Max said that when we open the cart, we're still not outputting the cart items here. So I'm not sure whether or not this is supposed to work yet, but this isn't supposed to work anyway, the pop-up. So I'm going to continue and see what comes up, because I've paused it and went through the code and tried to figure out where it was going wrong, and I'm not sure, and maybe it's not even going wrong, so let's just continue for the moment. Okay, so now in our cart we are going to use context, and we'll figure this out, do you know what I mean? So it's all good. So in here in our cart component we are going to use context again, so we'll import use context. What import use context, perfect, from React. Yep. And then we'll also import the cart context that we want to use, so we will import cart context, and then we can use this cart context. So I'm going to slow him down, he's talking really quick. I have him on quick again, I don't know don't know what I'd be doing. So well while I was debugging I was trying to see what was wrong. So then if we come in here to our cart, but maybe that's why I'm missing things, or maybe I'm not, who knows, we'll just continue. So in our cart context here, I will equal this to the use context, and we want to use the context of our cart context. So use context cart context here, perfect. Yeah, so we have a dummy array of items here that we're mapping over, but rather than mapping over a dummy array, what we can do is map over the cart context. So what's being stored in that context there. So we can map over cart context dot items. Okay. Yeah, so we'll just update this amount so it's not hard coded the whole time. So within our cart here as well, we'll just create another constant called total amount. Yep. And we'll equal this to cart context dot total amount, and just do the toFixed here again, so it's definitely always going to be to 2 decimal places. And what we also want to do is just add this to a template literal. So we'll add our backticks like so. Yep. And I'll just cut that. Come on, move over it. And paste it, and then add in my $2 and our curly parentheses, because we want this to come out as the actual value, and you know, perform the operation and just give us back the total amount. So that's what that's going to do now for us. And we can use this now down here where we had just a hard-coded value. We use our JSX brackets again to, you know, put the calculated amount down here. So I'll paste that in there. And now we should have our actual amount. So let's actually have a quick look at that. That should just be all we need there. Okay, so we're getting an error. That's okay. Cart CXX our total amount. Did I say items? Okay. Yeah. Cool. So we have our $2 here, by the way, because we want one of them to perform the operation on this actual piece of code and send out the correct amount. But then the second $sign we have is because we want to actually display a $sign. So that's what's going on there. And we can see we actually have one too many brackets, although that should just output as well as a bracket at the end. So it shouldn't be causing any problems. But to be sure, it shouldn't be there anyway, so we'll get rid of it. Okay, so do we need to pass it in first? I'm getting ahead of myself again. Cool. And we'll also only allow this order button to display if we have indeed got items. So we'll create another constant called has items. Const has items. So if there are items in the cart, we can then either show the button or hide the button dependent on whether or not there is items in the cart. So we'll get our cart context in order to see this. So cart context and dot length dot items dot length. If we have more than 0 items in the cart, then we have got items. So now we can only show this button if we have items. So we'll just say if has items. So rather than putting that here, we'll put it here. No, we'll use it here, yeah, disabled, because we're not trying to show or hide the button. We're trying to just display to disable it. So I'll disable if we do not have items. Like so, perfect. So now, if I reload, if I open the cart, we have problems. Total amount is undefined. So in our cart context, we should have total amount defined. So in our cart context, here's our total amount. Amount is total amount. So should it be cart context dot amount? We're actually referring to this as amount, not as total amount. So I've used the wrong name, it seems. So if I change that to amount, I actually think we might be okay, because that's what we are calling our cart context here. And the way it's being handled is we have our cart state dot total amount, and that's being assigned to this amount property. So I think I've just called out the wrong name there. So instead, if I say cart context amount, it should have an amount. Ooh, 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 baby, 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 you're making me so crazy today. Okay. Guys, I'm going to call it a day there. I think my productivity levels are dropping because I feel like I've just been getting a bit stuck. And anyway, we've reached the end of the hour on 58 minutes. So that's good enough for me. I'll cut it 2 minutes short. And that feels like a big relief today. So we actually did very well. We did great. You know, we made a lot of progress, but there was just, my brain wasn't thinking as logically as it could have been. And that's okay. Do you know what I mean? You get some days where everything makes sense, you fire through, you don't have any errors, and then you have other days where everything isn't so smooth sailing, and both are to be expected. So just do your best on each of those days. You know, do what you can. It's no big deal. We're all human, we're not robots. So just do your best. And yeah, peace and love from Lily Code. As always, have an absolutely wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves, guys. Take a walk outside, smile at somebody, just do it all. And thanks so much for joining me. Thanks, guys.